Food has been described as an instrument of power and proportionately related to national development. That's why organizations like Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations exist. As of November 2014, 805 million people globally were suffering from chronic undernourishment, and that's according to World Food Programme. Now, in Nigeria, one of the effects of insurgency is that nearly 500,000 people, mostly the internally displaced persons, face acute food shortage. How can food security be ensured in Nigeria? That's the question that this episode of Big Story will attempt to answer. I'm Amy Thompson. Current hunger statistics from World Food Programme indicates that 795 million people in the world do not have enough food to lead a healthy life, and a vast majority live in developing countries. Unfortunately, Sub-Saharan Africa is the region with the highest prevalence of hunger, with about 235,000 in West Africa facing emergency food insecurity. Such figures beg for answers to questions such as, how did the world get to this level?
Yes, there is a serious challenge currently now regarding food security globally because of this issue of climate change. And these deforestations in most of the forests we have, because agriculture basically depend on maybe in the forest and then the agri reserves we have. But globally now, because of the climate change now, most of our forests are now being affected, and this is affecting the productivity in the agricultural sector. And this is a really challenge that maybe have to be addressed, either individually by each countries and globally by international institutions that are in charge of these agricultural issues.
The World Food Programme has given other factors which has contributed to the situation, to include lack of investment in agriculture, referring to investment in improving land management, using water more efficiently, and making more resistant seed types available. This supports the complaints of Nigeria's Minister of Agriculture, Audu Ogbeh, that the 1.6% allocation of the 2016 budget may be insufficient to fund the plan for the year. And over time, this has placed farmers as poor.
Agric has not really attracted the Nigerian elite that much. It's a peasant enterprise, and the poor farmer really is a nameless individual out there, no address, no name, because he's just there tilling the soil and subsidizing the stomachs of the elite in the cities.
Another factor highlighted by the WFO is displacement, one which Nigeria has experienced in recent years through the activities of insurgents. With a figure of displaced persons hitting over 2 million, according to the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, food production has dropped, especially in the northeast, while demand has increased. But even before the insecurity challenge, development economists believe Nigeria would still have to deal with inadequate food.
One, in Nigeria, as we have it today, because of this tendency towards the white-collar job, and again, what we call in economics the Dutch disease, when the oil revenue came on board, and then there was a shift in focus from the primary sector, agricultural sectors, to the oil sectors now, led to many potential farmers or the people who are to go into agriculture to divert from that sectors to the mining sector and co. And this put a lot of challenges on agricultural sectors. One, in terms of public attention, the policy issues, the programs as well were a little bit more committed to agricultural sectors, and therefore attention was not pleased on agricultural sectors. And therefore, over time, the agriculture sector was maybe the dominant sector of the Nigerian economy in the 60s, now became something that maybe is contributing very less than 30% in real terms to the sectors. And because of this, since the agriculture sector involved two aspects, the cash crops and then the food crops, why those people in the cash crops, they were able to make some money, especially from 1986 when there was a change in exchange policy in Nigeria. The people again in food aspect of the sector again, then divert again to cash crops, which now led to more a negative effect on the food production in Nigeria. And therefore, even when there's no climate change globally, the Nigeria, because of policy misdirection again, the agricultural sector in Nigeria, specifically with respect to food productions, is seriously affected from even government policy as well.
This background builds the areas that demand attention for the Ministry of Agriculture, and he says he's decided to handle things in batches. One of the areas of concentration presently is to mechanize rice production through the purchase of 400 tractors.
These machines are going to be built here. The reapers we bring in from India and then reproduce them here. They're like lawnmowers. They cut the rice and then leave on the floor and you pick and thresh. Makes it so much easier because the stress on the local farmer is not small. The stress on women especially, who have to beat the rice on the floor and try and winnow and put in sacks, is absolutely slave labor. We don't want that to continue.
The Bank of Agriculture believes in this approach and asks that mechanization be expanded to other areas.
So that we are now able to use technology to connect the producers as well as the processors, the marketers. Now, as well as, if you like, the input suppliers. Like we have under the Anko Barrow program, we are able now to get the input suppliers like chemical, as well as extension services to work together with the millers as well as the farmers. Now, this is the kind of, if you like, ecosystem that we are trying to create between not only small scale producers and processors, but also along with, if you like, vertically. I mean, not only horizontally, but also vertically. We want to make sure that large-scale producers, large-scale input suppliers are also working together with small-scale producers, small-scale processors, small-scale marketers, not only domestic marketers, but also who would like to export out of the country.
Even from the bank, there's requests for more funding.
The Bank of Agriculture today is not as resourceful as before. If we get more resources, we have lined up quite a number of areas. We, in general, would like to support farmers across the value chain, not only at the level of primary production. For example, if you want to have fertilizer, if you want to have, if you like, seeds, if you want to have agrochemicals, all of these, the providers of these must be able to produce them. We cannot be simply importing them. For instance, agricultural mechanization. We need tractors, we need equipment, we need combine harvesters, we need power tillers. Now, all of these, we need to support them. Now, if you are supporting farmers like in fisheries, we need cold storage, we need support the producers. When the producers produce the fisheries, we have to make sure that down the chain, the marketers, the processors are equally supported. So yes, food preservation is very important. It's part of the value chain. What we are trying to come up with is supporting farmers across the value chain.
This request has become necessary partly because of bad debts.
This is a new management. In the past, yes, it's possible to say there were people who collected loans who were not farmers. One of the first things we are trying to do is taking stock of all those that have borrowed money from the Bank of Agriculture. And like you could see in our press statement, that we call on all farmers that have defaulted to come forward and settle their loans. As far as the bank is concerned, there are laid down procedure. We don't consider political farmers. There are laid down criteria for assessing the different facilities that the bank offers, either out of its own resources or out of resources deposited in the bank to meet specific, for example, the Niger Delta Youth Empowerment Program, the DFID, and several other collaboration programs that we've had and that we're going to have. As far as we are concerned, we do not consider political farmers as, candidates for our loan. And that is why we are trying to now put the requirements of having a BVN, put the requirements of making sure that farmers were able to know their GPS location. Where are the farms? That's why we want to now incorporate it as part of our restructuring plan. Anybody coming to borrow money from the bank We want to know their identities, and that is why VVN is very important. And secondly, that's why we want to pilot the idea of getting the GPS position of the farms.
Other requirements to access loan in the bank include running an account with BOA for at least 6 months and evidence of existing farms, among others.